Don't let anyone tell you or try to convince you that modern horror is dead. Far from it. Let's talk about one of this year's quite big films, at least box office wise, The Black Phone. Hi, my name's Stu and welcome to another review video on Flying Wiener. We are continuing Spooktober, Shocktober, whatever you want to call it. So throughout October, every week I'm going to cover a spooky or slash horror film, whichever. So for this week I have chosen The Black Phone, which actually made quite a big dent at the box office this year, certainly for a horror film, you know, which they aren't always that big when it comes to the dollars they make. This one certainly did. It was very, very popular. Unfortunately, I didn't get to see it in cinemas, but it seemingly was released very, very early on Blu-ray because that's where I got it and watched it at home. Now, we will get into the plot shortly if you haven't heard of it, yes, what I mentioned in the intro is absolutely my point of view. So nowadays, while of course you could say that there have been certain trends where people are very lazy and do things that aren't that spectacular, particularly when it comes to gaming, but also in film, you know, you had a certain period where it was more about jump scares than it was actual horror, you know. I myself prefer when it is real horror, so while a jump scare is fine, it's great, you know, it is fun to jump out of your seat. I do like things that are just a lot more, you know, malicious and, you know, just have this sort of undertone where you're not sure where it's going and it's something really deep-seated within you that just doesn't feel you know, comfortable about whatever's happening on screen. So that's the kind of horror I like, where, you know, your skin's crawling because something is just horrible to think about. Either something that's actually happening or implications that are made of stuff that happens. As they say, you know, your worst monsters, etc., come from your imagination. So, you know, that's my type of horror. Anyway, The Black Phone, let's talk about it. You might have seen it. The poster itself, I'm sure, has been seen and shared quite a lot around social media. We don't really need to hide it. It's not a spoiler. I mean, the guy's on the poster itself. This film stars Ethan Hawke, and he is the villain. He is the killer. With a simple name, The Grabber in this case, because we're actually set in 1978, so this isn't current time. It's quite a few decades back. And we are focused around Denver, I believe. I think the story takes place in Denver. We're focused on a group of kids from a local school who, one after the other, start disappearing. And, well, the newspapers, as it was very, very trendy back then, they gave all these serial killers all these trendy names. And in this case, it's The Grabber. And we are focused on mainly two children, or two siblings, both very, very young. I believe they're supposed to be 13 and 10 or 9, one of the two. So we've got a 13-year-old boy and we've got a 9 or 10-year-old girl. We are focused a lot on them because what happens is that some of their friends and schoolmates, they start disappearing one after the other. We see that very early on in the film. And then eventually the boy is kidnapped by the grabber and it ends up in his basement. And we see a lot of that. The girl at the same time, and this is where it has some slight supernatural quality, this film. She has some very, very basic psychic powers where in her dreams she sometimes, not all the time, but sometimes sees things that actually turn out to be the truth and actually happening. And so in this case, she is trying to use those powers to somehow find her brother once she realizes he's gone and that you know, potentially the grabber has got him. So that is the basic story, and we're jumping back between those two. So the boy is played by Mason Thames, and the girl's played by Madeleine McGraw. Two fabulous actors, by the way. And generally the acting, I mean, I know I talk about this a lot, but I am just through and through so impressed by the quality of child actors we have nowadays. Because in this whole film, where the majority of people you see and encounter on screen are actually kids, they're all fabulous to watch, really, really good. Particularly those two who are really the main roles, apart from Ethan Hawke, of course. But yes, so we keep switching between the two, and we spend a lot of time with Mason's character in the basement and him trying to figure out, you know, if there's some kind of way he can escape. That's where the black phone comes in. This is also shown in the trailer, so it's not a spoiler actually. There's a black phone there on the wall. The grabber tells him it doesn't work anymore, you know, it's been there since forever, since his childhood or something. But we discover very soon that the ghosts of the former kids who were killed by the grabber, they communicate to him through that phone. So they communicate to Mason's character, and they try to help him get out of there. I won't tell you how it goes, of course. If you want to see how it goes, you'll have to watch the film and find out for yourself. But that's as much as I'll tell you about the plot. Now, I love the setting. I think it's great, and even down to how it was filmed, so you feel really just like you're jumping into the 70s here. The whole flair of everything, it really just has that vibe, and even that look. We sometimes see flashbacks, and they've got this really grainy quality, the images that we're seeing, and you immediately feel transported back to the time, you know, with clothes and just the general feel. Even the tone of the film. I mean, I didn't notice this myself, but watching the extras on a Blu-ray, they also mentioned this, especially that they, even with the colour grading, you know, they were thinking about what did the 70s look like. And it's weird, although I wasn't around in the 70s, the way it looks here and the kind of colours you've got all around, it's really like I would imagine the 70s to be. So yeah, they did a fabulous job here, just generally the direction. Scott Derickson is the director, who, if you don't know, he did, for instance, the first Doctor Strange film. Was supposed to do the second one, but he jumped off that train before it really got rolling. So we are talking about somebody who definitely has got a lot of horror in his resume, you know. Well, you might think Doctor Strange isn't like that. It does have certain horror elements in it. And he's done other things as well. Of course, he did Sinister, for instance, which was also a horror film with Ethan Hawke, which I saw in the cinema, haven't seen it since then, was also very good, really like that. So yeah, we've got somebody who knows what they're doing. And the whole flair of it is great. And then you've, of course, got Ethan Hawke, who you need to talk about. He did say in interviews that he wasn't actually a big guy on playing villains, and Sinister as well, for instance, which was a good 10, 12 years ago, something like that, I believe. He also played the hero, so here he decided, you know, he's going to play the villain. He explains in an interview that's on the Blu-ray as well that he just decided or discovered or realised, whatever you want to call it, that, you know, he's 50 now, so he has to start thinking about maybe playing villains as well. I'm assuming because, of course, a hero typically goes through a lot of strain, through a lot of films physically and all sorts of things, and I suppose it's a lot more fun to play villains as well. So I suppose we'll see more of that from him. I mean, he did also play the villain in Moon Knight, so this is at least the second role that we're seeing him in where he's a villain, and he is just incredible. Now, the mask is a great asset that he has. Obviously, it's very creepy. You know, you don't actually see a lot of his facial expressions because he's under the mask a lot, but he uses it really well. So, you know, with his speech patterns, etc., he's giving you a really, really creepy vibe from him. And what is also interesting is we never quite find out what his motivations are. You know, we're always guessing. So you're left quite in the dark about everything. You're wondering, you know, why is he doing this and that? And he does a really good job of really leading us on. You know, we want to find more about him. But the scenes we do get from him are just amazing. For my preference, I would have wanted to have a bit more of him in the film, even more actually, you know, because I just love the character. And I wanted to find out more about him, just see as much as possible. But I get that it's interesting, you know, I guess I just liked them so much that I wanted to have more in them. But they deliberately went this route where they said, no, you know, one of the scariest things in real life is when, first of all, this can just happen to anyone, anywhere. And second of all, you know, you have a killer who just doesn't really need a big motivation, because sometimes, unfortunately, that's how the real world works. So, yeah, he is absolutely amazing. If you're a fan of his, you should watch it just for him alone. The vibe and the creepiness and everything, it's definitely there. It's not the scariest film I have seen, so I feel that they could have turned that up. Maybe a bit more even for my liking, but I enjoyed the atmosphere. And like I already said, the child actors and Mason Thames and the main role here, absolutely great, you know, when he's got these encounters, not just with the grabber, but also you see trouble in school, and the two kids, they've got, unfortunately, an abusive father, which is also a bit difficult to watch at times, especially if you've got children yourself. But, you know, just if you look at the acting by the two of them, really amazing. I couldn't believe it. They definitely convinced me. I was like, yeah, I'll be watching them in future easily. But yes, overall, really good vibes. So it was a rather surprising film. I don't know, I'm a bit torn. Because I did think, you know, I would have loved to be a bit scarier even. You know, turn up the horror dial a bit. Also turn up the Ethan Hawke character, the grabber, a bit more. I would have wanted to see more of that. But again, I get it. This was just the way they went. And yeah, sometimes more realistic scenarios, you know, that aren't really outlandish or what have you, can also be very, very scary. And just, again, the overall feel of the whole thing, I just really enjoyed this short trip to the 70s, even although it was with a horror background or horror purpose in that sense. Yes, if you see this pop up anywhere on streaming, etc., I would certainly recommend to grab it. Yes, pun intended in this case. And yeah, just the mask alone. If you're a fan of masks and what people do with them in films, you know, to just change characterization or just how people interact with other people, you really should watch this, because the mask just doesn't stay as it is. I'll just spoil that wee bit. So there are slight variations of the mask as well, and they're all quite cool, and they all, you know, when you think about it, they all serve different purposes and just make it really, really interesting. Okay, that'll be it for this week. Haven't decided yet what I'm going to watch next week, so what I will grab from the horror genre. We'll see, whether old or new, I can't say. I'll just go with whatever floats my boat. Anyway, if you enjoyed this video, please like, share and subscribe. It is the best way to support this channel. Leave a comment down below about this film, whether you have seen it, want to see it, what do you think about Ethan Hawke playing villains. Is that an idea that you think is exciting? I definitely do. I think he's an amazing actor, so yes please, more of it, all the time. If you have any other recommendations for films that you want me to see, either right now for this Halloween gig, or just in general, please put them down below as well. I'll thank you again for watching, and I'll see you in the next video on Flying Wiener. Take care, always look behind you while you're walking around in October. And I'll see you in the next video. Bye.